My cat needs surgery. Please buy my book. Don't worry. My cat does not need surgery. Hello, Copelia. You have a new favorite spot these days, don't you? But chances are you may have seen a post like this, and I recently became aware that this finally has a name, which is pity marketing. I wanted to discuss this type of marketing because I've noticed it for a long time and it has always bothered me. Not necessarily because people sometimes use it as a way to fundraise when they're in a tight spot, because, we do live in a capitalist hellhole, but because, you know what, it's a bad idea for your career. Pity marketing can take a number of forms. One is the aforementioned, you have some kind of crisis, so you plead for people to buy your book as a way of funding an unexpected expense. You lost your job, you have medical expense, etc. Kind of an alternative to GoFundMe and platforms like that. It can't just be complaining that your book isn't selling, and I've noticed a rash of this lately, kind of like people, like whenever I pop on the social media platforms, I've noticed more posts with people just kind of saying nobody's buying my book. Or it could be displays of patheticness, shall we say. Like the viral post about an old woman who had a book signing, and there was a TikTok post nobody bought her book, and then after she went viral, a bunch of people bought her book, and then I think they kind of revealed the whole thing was sort of staged, but they're not always staged. And I do find, personally, that it can be difficult to balance the demand for transparency that social media offers with not wanting to do pity marketing. If you're a regular on this channel, you know that I try to be really transparent with you guys about how much money I make and how difficult it can be to make a living as a creative, and just the reality behind what can sometimes seem like a glamorous life, and that there's a bunch of people busting out. And it does happen all the time that people do have a book go viral, a series go viral, they make a lot of money. That is real, that happens. But as someone who's been in it for a long time now, almost coming up on 20 years fairly soon, I also know that it often doesn't last. It doesn't carry you through much beyond that initial period. So you might have a really good 5 years, maybe, which is great. And then whatever you were doing, it just doesn't work anymore. That is just as common as having a big hit. So anyway, when I'm being realistic and transparent about this stuff, it can be a tricky balance not to sound like I'm complaining about it, because I am very realistic about it. I don't want to come across please, you guys need to buy my book and support the channel, otherwise I'm going to have to go work at the grocery store. I've never said anything like that, but I don't want that to be the underlying implication that you are somehow under an obligation to support me so I can follow my dreams, because ultimately, if you're not actually enjoying the content I create, why should you do that? There's a million me's out there trying to make this whole thing work, so I'm very realistic about that. The product needs to be good, whereas pity marketing is often about more the vibe that whether the product is good or not, the creator just needs help. They need your help. And in that way, it's intended to evoke more of the emotions of a GoFundMe rather than a successful marketing campaign. And it can work. Sometimes it does work, but it is extremely unsustainable, even more unsustainable than having a book go viral on TikTok or really pop off on the Amazon algorithm or something like that. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit. One anecdote that has stuck with me for my entire life, I don't even remember where I heard it or whether it's true, was that before David Bowie was famous, he went around acting like he was famous, dressing up all fancy, probably blowing money he didn't have or something like that, but basically acting like he already was the David Bowie that he must have known he was destined to be. I have carried that idea with me since I was 20 years old, and I've always kind of tried to bear in mind that I need to be David Bowie before you will follow me as David Bowie. Like, David Bowie was David Bowie before people gave a shit. I think that is often the foundation of sustained success. And where does that come from? It comes from personal confidence, particularly personal confidence in your artistic vision. You might not be confident in all areas of your life. I don't think David Bowie was, and I'm not either. But you're confident in the one thing that you're trying to offer the world at the very least. And you have a personal vision, what you are bringing to the world, your creative vision, and how you're going to communicate it to others. Pity marketing feels like the total opposite of this philosophy, because you're not coming off like you think you're David Bowie or that you're ever going to become David Bowie. You're coming off like a really bad street musician hoping that somebody will throw like a crumpled $1 bill in your guitar case, and that you will manage to scrounge up enough of that to pay your next bill. I believe that art, creating art, enjoying art, the space to create art is incredibly important, and I try to support it in every way possible. I feel like we should be supporting it both personally and on more of a structural level. I feel that every person should have some time in their life to create something if they want to. That is my broad philosophy. But I do realize that this is a privileged career, even though I'm certainly not rich or anything, but like what I'm making is not crucial to anybody's life the way that, you know, a farmer or an electrician or something like that. I'm not doing anything that someone couldn't live without if they were really strapped for resources. And there's a bunch of other writers out there. I need to be able to give something to the world that the world actually wants, or this career is not viable. So if I'm trying to sell something and it's just going absolutely nowhere, the answer isn't really to like whine about it. It's to change what I'm doing. Maybe my skill isn't up to par. Maybe my stories just aren't appealing to like anybody, or maybe it's the way I'm presenting them that just isn't, people aren't realizing how much they're going to like this story. But certainly one facet of an artistic career, even if you do have fans, you do have people that love what you do, there is very little safety net. That's true of a lot of people who aren't artists and writers as well. A lot of people don't have a safety net anymore. So you can get yourself into a pickle if you have a situation where you haven't been able to build up a lot of savings, or it's hard to take time off. Like, one thing about YouTube is that if you don't put out videos regularly, the algorithm just really fast. So like, it's not like Google gives me vacation time if I'm not able to put out a YouTube video. Therefore, when you're relying on algorithms, things can go downhill for you very quickly. And I do feel for people who get in a situation like that. Some things happened outside their control, like they're just sick, or they need to take care of someone who's sick, or they need to take care of a situation, or they're having a baby, whatever. Sometimes you can't put out content. Very quickly, all the algorithms can start to collapse on you, and they don't just always bounce back immediately when you're back. So there's like that kind of pity marketing where you're basically pleading for people to help support you through a rough time. And I don't think it's necessarily all bad to let your followers know that this is happening and kind of suggest like, hey, if you've been wanting to read any of my books, it would be a great time if you bought them now. But if you lean on this too much, you can actually start to sabotage your career, because you have the potential to reach beyond your usual audience, to go viral in like a, oh, poor this person kind of way, and get people who wouldn't normally like what you do, but are just throwing some money at you because they feel bad for whatever you're going through. And this could, even if it doesn't go viral, it could just kind of be among like your friends group. You know, your mom posts it to her Facebook, and suddenly all her friends at her club or her gym, her book club, you know, they buy your book. This can really mess you up, because if you're relying on algorithms and suddenly everyone who's buying your book is like not your usual audience, the algorithms start to get confused. Who is your audience? Then when you try to come back and like reboot things for real, you've totally thrown off your algorithms, because now they think that this random audience that's not your usual audience is your audience. And so rather than like targeting you properly in the algorithm to the people who would normally buy your book, now they're just scattering you wherever, whatever direction. You know, if your mom's a little woo-woo like my mom, suddenly your also bots on Amazon are like an astrology book, but you wrote a fantasy novel, can throw you off. I even see this somewhat with the YouTube channel because I talk about writing advice here. And a lot of my also bots are writing instruction books, not novels. So that's not ideal for me, but because that's the strategy that I'm following, like in a long-term way, it's just kind of a side effect that can entirely be avoided. But it's not something that you would want to do in like a quick burst, especially because like it could throw you off and it could take you a long time to recover from that. So while it might seem like a good idea to get people to buy your book instead of setting up a GoFundMe for an emergency, it's probably still better just to do the GoFundMe or to tell people like PayPal me if you want to help with my surgery or whatever it is. And if it's more of just a long-term thing where you're just kind of generally complaining that nobody's buying your book, I feel like the risk with that is that it just kind of makes you're just presenting yourself as somebody that nobody really wants. I don't think this has ever been a good strategy for selling anything, to be like, nobody wants this, boo-hoo, but would you like to please support me? But there is the question of, let's say that you're creating something that is a little offbeat, but you know there is an audience for it. This is kind of the situation in which I have found myself, because I know there is an audience for books like my Hidden Land series, which has deep world building and some quirky aspects that, while they might not be at the top of the book talk charts, I know there is an audience for them. I know there are people asking for this kind of thing. I'm trying to find them. And is there an instance where sometimes pity marketing can help you? Sometimes I do think it can be part of a strategy. One type of post that I think can work, for example, is, you guys keep saying you want X, and I wrote a book with X, but it's not selling. While I think there might be a better way to phrase that, I do think that it might be worth pointing out to the internet at large that, like, I have a thing that people keep asking for, and like, you said you wanted it, where is the buyers for it? I saw somebody on Threads at one point post like, you guys keep saying that you want fantasy novels with black main characters written by black people. I wrote one, but I had a post go viral and I only sold 50 copies or whatever. I think in that case, it can even be part of like a larger social conversation that people will kind of say that they want something diverse or like kind of wholesome, feminist, whatever, but they don't always actually buy what they claim that they want. It's kind of like how people are with food, that chances are if you asked someone publicly, what is your diet like? A lot of people would say my diet is great. If you actually analyze what they eat, you would see a little more fast food than they told you in public. I think that there is an aspect of that with readers as well, where people will say they want a lot of I don't want that toxic romance. I want books with strong, well-written women and healthy relationships and diversity. They don't always actually read that stuff in the quantity that they claim to want it. And I've said before, part of that is not necessarily the individual reader is to blame. I think part of it is marketing can make it harder to find those books, and also that everybody who wants the same thing wants the same thing in the same way, but everybody who wants different things wants different things. Therefore, it's always harder to market the different thing, because you've got 100 people saying they want different things and they all actually want different things from each other. Whereas if you're just looking at the mainstream, I just want to read what's popular and talk about it with my girls, they're fine with the same thing. They have a different reading goal. So I do think it's worthy of having a certain level of discussion about that, as well as perhaps leveraging it to kind of get it out there. Like, okay, I do know that some of you do want romance that's not toxic, and I do have one. But ultimately, like, you can't shame people into reading something they don't want to read, but you can remind them what they're missing. So those are my thoughts on pity marketing, when it might be a good idea and why it usually isn't. Have you noticed a rise in pity marketing like I have, or is this just something that seems to be on the rise because social media is just so prevalent these days? And how do you feel about it when somebody posts something like that? Do you feel like there's a place for some pity marketing, or does it drive you nuts? What are your thoughts on it? I do think most pity marketing still comes from like just a place of genuine frustration that people can't help but air, or genuine panic over a bad life situation, or genuine frustration that they've written something that they thought people would like, and like, why the heck don't they? I don't think that most of it is meant to be manipulative and like conniving. So I don't want to like shame anyone who has done this. And as I said, I sometimes struggle with the line between just being honest and sounding pathetic myself. If you're new here, my name is Lydia Foxglove. I'm a fantasy author. I've been a full-time writer since 2009, and I talk about the creative life in general and writing in particular. If that sounds good to you, feel free to stick around. If you like more from me, I have a Substack and a Patreon, as well as YouTube memberships. The paid tier gets you 2 bonus videos a month voted on by you guys, as well as access to my Discord server where we chat about writing and creative life and nerdy stuff. And if you'd like to read any of my books, I always recommend the Hidden Lands books because they are the books of my heart. As always, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for supporting the channel. I post nearly every Sunday at 3 p.m. Eastern, as well as oftentimes on Wednesday at 8 or 9 p.m. Eastern, if you want to catch the live chat. And I will see you next time. Bye!